folks, Marcus here from the Ashland Fly Shop. We're back again here at the Vise. We're going to continue tying some of these tube flies in a series that we'll be having some iteration of, hopefully in the bins down the road. This one's going to kind of be a egg-sucking leech style, black, blue, and purple. Which is a pretty popular fly in a lot of the places that we like to fish, so we'll get going here. So we'll start, we have a black micro tube and we'll slide it onto the flexi needle. And you just want to make sure, like last time, that this little knuckle section is towards the back of the fly. And then I'm going to wrap, I've got 140 thread in fluorescent orange, and I'm just going to start way at the very back of this tube here and start kind of giving myself a little bit of a thread base here. And then I'm going to come back to the rear, and then, you know, through the body of the fly, I'm going to have Flashabou wrapped up through the body with ultra wire and silver to kind of catch it and keep everything, you know, tied down. So I'll tie in the ultra wire first, and this is just medium silver, and I'll lay it right on my near side. And just as long as you want that Flashabou to come up through the body, that's how long you tie this ultra wire in through. So I'm just going to take my Flashabou pack, and what I often do is just, you know, pull a few strands out of here. If I can get into there. Pull a few strands out of there. And I usually do, you know, 6 or 8, just so that that wrapping happens a little bit quicker. If you just do a few strands, it's just going to take you a lot longer to wrap up through the body. So I've got, you know, dangly blue steely Flashabou. I'll tie it right on top of my tube. Line up the ends a little bit. And then I'll start to wrap forward through the body, making sure that I'm covering up all that orange thread underneath. And this is a body style that I've been doing for quite a long time now, and it's honestly one of my favorite ways to make the body look. It's uniform, it's thin, and it's not bulky. So coming up right behind that, I'll just do a couple really even wraps of ultra wire. And then I'm going to tie that off, and just trying to keep those wraps as even as you can make them. And this fly, you know, an intruder version of it, you would have a station with dubbing or some type of prop in here. But for this fly, I'm just going to use marabou, and I'm just going to be spinning marabou around the tube. So I've got, you know, a big hunk of black marabou here, and kind of go on my search mission to find one that'll do the job. And I've said it before, I just like I like marabou that's got kind of a thinner stem. And this one's twisted, so I'm gonna kind of peel away some of this fluff towards the back of the feather. And just get a working distance with this feather that seems good. So, you know, it's about 1.5 inches worth of feather on each side. And I'm just going to tie it in right where that feather's starting to twist. Couple good wraps there. Grab everything from the tip section, clip it real close. And then I'm just gonna start to wrap this feather, making sure as much as I can that nothing's getting trapped. Making sure that marabou is all going the direction that I want it to. And I'll just tie off this stem here. And this is gonna have 3 different stations of that. So I've got black marabou there. The next I'm gonna go to is a kingfisher blue. And again, just go on a little mission to find something that's gonna work for what we're doing. This stem is a little bit thicker than what I like, but I'm just gonna peel away everything from the thick part of the stem and leave myself with that tip section that has quite a bit of movement in it. Same thing here. Just gonna work with about 1 inch or 1 inch and a whatever section of this feather, and tie it in at the tip, right where we left off with that black marabou. Same thing here, I'll just grab this stem. And I'm going to tie off that stem there. And there you can see you've got, you know, when you work with that top section of the marabou, you just get so much of that wispy character of marabou, which for me, if I was just tying flies, for how well they look in the water and how well they hold up, I would probably only do marabou flies. They're super easy to tie, and the material just looks exceptional in the water. I tie with a lot of ostrich, but I've been finding more and more that ostrich just doesn't seem to hold up as well over time as marabou does. They look awesome right when you tie them, but marabou seems to hold up a little better over time. So I'm going to do the same thing with purple marabou, and this one just doesn't quite look how I want it to. I kind of prepped it and got it ready, but if you can see that it has, you know, somewhere in the dyeing process it got these little pinched marks in it, and I'll save this one and use it down the road, but I'm not going to use it today. Just going to use the good stuff today. So same thing, I've got a purple marabou feather, and I'm just going to grab about 1 inch worth of this guy. Tie it in from the tip. And it's worth saying a lot of us are, you know, doing what we can to stay busy at home, you know, reduce time interacting with folks, and sitting down tying a fly for a trip we hope is still going to happen in the fall is a pretty fun thing to do. It's a good way to keep your mind on good things coming down the road. So there I've got all 3 colors through the fly here. And you could really, if it was a time thing, where's my little comb? If it was a time thing, you could just whip finish it right there, slide a bead on top of there, and call it done, because that thing already, how it is pretty dang fishy. But this isn't necessarily a time thing. So we're going to add some of the things that we like to see in flies here. One of them being a little bit of flash through the fly. So same thing, I'm going to use this Flashaboo in Steely Blue. And I don't flash my flies very heavily, so I'm just going to tie in literally 2 strands on my near side and wrap them over, let them come to the far side. Clip them a little long. I like them to be long through the fly. And then on top of that, I've been contemplating a little bit of Amherst, thinking about if a little Amherst would look good coming through the sides of this fly. And you know what? I think it will. So with Amherst, I just I tie it pretty sparse, and I try to, these feathers can get so sticky, and I try to peel them apart a little bit. So I've got just some natural Amherst coming through each side of the fly. Might even do a little less on my near side. Just gives it a little barring, little bit of contrast coming through the fly. It's totally not critical as a material, but it gives the fly something extra. And another thing that does that too is saddle feathers, which I've got a couple. I think these are just the hairline half saddles that I've got here. And this is the fluorescent blue color. And how long you tie these in, there's, you know, a little preference in there. I just like them to come close to being at the back of the fly when it's all laid down. Just having my over feathers be somewhere close to the back there. So I'm going to clip those and peel away some of this excess. And I always just, these ones are kind of curved, but they'll end up laying down once they're in the water. I'm going to go a little bit further back on these guys. So there I've got you know, relatively short barring coming through the top of the fly, and they're a little splayed out now, but you know, once they get wet, they'll just move through the fly. This is another thing worth saying, you know, this is the same point you could get here and just call it done with the fly, but I'm gonna add a guinea collar, because I think it'll just be nice to have. Sometimes what I do in flies is use a schlappen collar like this to just give the whole fly more of a dark tone coming up from the head, and it really influences what the whole fly looks like in the water, what collar you choose. Choosing a fluorescent one or a dark one like this. So I'm going to clip it in there. And before I wrap, I'm just going to make sure that it's going the direction that I want and that not too much is getting trapped in there. I'm just gonna tie that guy off. So I'm gonna choose some kind of medium-sized JC here. You know, it's worth saying there's a lot of good substitutes for this stuff out there. Pro Sport Fisher has one that's pretty dang nice, and Aquaflies, I think, has come up with probably the most, what I'd say is the most realistic looking substitute out there now, which is really nice to see something like that. So I've got one tied in on the near side, and I'll lay one on the far side and start to tie that guy in too. Now I just want to make sure, I think this one on this far side is a little too splayed. That's looking better. And this is the small size flexi bead in fluorescent pink. And I'm just gonna do a series of half hitches right on top of those JC stems. And I'm gonna try to avoid building up any extra thread that I don't need, because I like it when the bead has the room to slide right on top of those materials without having any type of gap. So I'm gonna finish this fly. I use Loon's I use Loon Hardhead, and I just get it on my bodkin here, and I start on the top there, usually just dropping a ball of it and then working it all the way around. Just making sure that it totally covers the thread and doesn't get too much on any of the other materials. Then I'm going to slide this bead right on top of that hard head. And I just let it sit for a little bit. Let that glue dry. If I were at home, I'd probably let it sit a little bit longer. But we'll see if we can just do this without having that bead slide off. So we slide the tube off of our needle. And I'm going to clip the tubing really short. Probably should have even clipped it shorter than that. But I always put it back through the needle before I do any burning. And then I just burn that back onto that bead. Slide it in again so that you know that you'll be able to get your tippet through there. And then for this fly, you could use any color hook guide that you want. I'm going to use black because I've got that hot spot up at the top of the fly with the bead that I don't really feel the need to do a double hot spot. I'm going to slide that guy off there. That JC didn't lay down exactly how I like it, but it's okay. And then I always just shove it all the way back through the needle to make sure that the whole tube is open. And that is what we're looking at for a tube fly. That's not too terribly intricate. It's got the colors that I like to fish up there and that a lot of folks like. A little bit of flash coming through the fly. Black, blue, purple. Geez, what's not to like there? So this was another episode of us working up one of these tube flies that in some iteration will probably be available down the road at the shop here. So thank you very much for tuning in.